There was a set of cards that, like, I did want to make a video on, but I just, like, never really got around to actually recording the video. And now I don't think that it makes a ton of sense to make custom cards. I feel like it's, like, almost BM towards Riot making custom cards. Like, oh, hey, they're not gonna make cards anymore, but what if this existed? I don't know. Like, I don't know that I want to go through and make the video now, but I'll at least go over these cards on stream. But they weren't, like, necessarily meant to be strong. They were meant to just a fun way to, like, live out the lore of this card, of this champ, I should say. Because we're talking about Naafiri. So Naafiri was going to be a Darken. Actually, yeah, I think all Darken champs in the game are Origin. And so the idea with Naafiri was to keep that tradition up. But Naafiri's like significantly weaker in lore to the other Darkens that we have in the game. So the We Are More, Naafiri's whole thing is that she's like a pack of dire wolves instead of just like one host. She is like a bunch of hosts. So that's why I made it so that her origin was that you put 10 copies of her into your deck during deck building. I don't have any concept of how that would work for deck building, because that would mean that you'd have to be able to get 10 champion cards to put this in your deck. Like, that doesn't sound right to me. I think we would just have to all agree that this makes sense in some world. Here's the problem with this deck building constraint is that her effect will revolve around there being multiple copies of her in the deck, but I don't want to make the deck more than 40 cards because I feel like that makes the deck like significantly weaker than most other decks in the game. So I don't know how the deck building restraint would work on this, but I wanted to try to keep the deck to 40 cards. But then the idea is that the origin has keywords on it, right? You can see that there are 5 keywords: Brash, Fearsome, Fury, Impact, and Overwhelm. And now those 10 cards are going to get one of those each. So you will have 2, if you have 10 cards in the deck that are Naafiri, you'll have 2 Brash, 2 Fearsome. You're not going to end up in a situation where you have 10 with Overwhelm. They will always alternate, and they are pre-assigned once the game starts. So it's not like you're going to draw one and it'll get a keyword. It'll like already have it in the deck. The origin effect we just went over, We Are More. Auto-equips the Darkened Dagger. The Darkened Dagger is just, I think I made it just a +1/+0 with Quick Attack. The first Naafiri that you play will have the Darkened Dagger and will have Quick Attack. That's why Quick Attack is not added as something on We Are More. But so now there's 6 keywords. So Naafiri will always have 2, right? If you only have 1 on the board. So now on attack, the first time a Naafiri attacks this round, summon a Naafiri from your deck attacking. On turn 3, you summon Naafiri, you attack in, you will get another Naafiri from your deck. This is intentional because I don't want the situation of you attack with one Naafiri and then it just floods your board with Naafiris yet. And now it will equip the other Naafiri with a Darkened Dagger fragment. We'll get into what that is later. It's not like super complicated. And then the level up condition is that I have seen 3 Naafiri start attack at the same time. I tried to word this in a way where you need to have 3 Naafiris on board declare an attack, which means that you need to spend turn 3 playing a Naafiri, attack in with it. Now you have 2 Naafiri, and then turn 4 or 5, you summon another Naafiri. There needs to be 3 on the board already. If you have 2 on the board and you attack in, and a third one comes out of the deck, that will not level Naafiri. That's like the intent, and the main reason for that is just like, I think that balances the card a little bit more to force you to have 3 on the board already. The reason that I think that Naafiri needs to be limited like this, all Naafiri share keywords. So now, if you have 5 different Naafiri with 5 different keywords, they all have those keywords, and summon as many Naafiri from your deck as possible attacking. That's the main payoff for this, is that now you have 6 3-mana 4/3s that have Quick Attack, Overwhelm, Brash, Impact. So that's why I'm trying to make it fairly balanced by like restricting the level up condition, is because I think the level up effect becomes really strong, especially later in the game if they wipe your board and then you end up with 1 card. You can play it, attack in, and then you're still dealing a butt ton of damage. The pack is many. Yeah, I mean, exactly. That is the exact concept I'm trying to go for with this. Naafiri keyword soup. Boys, we huntin'. So that's the thing, right? It's like, I don't think keyword soup champs are inherently bad. I think it's the design around the champs that become bad. Think of Victor, right? Victor sits there and does nothing until he gets too many keywords for you to deal with. This is the Darkened Dagger. So this is what the main Naafiri gets. It has no added stats, but it does give Quick Attack. It's 2 mana. It probably could be 1 mana. I don't know that like the equipment on this really matters, how much it is. So there's nothing really special about the Darkened Dagger other than that it gives a quick attack. I tried to make sure that the keywords that Naafiri was getting were not defensive keywords. If Naafiri was going to be a keyword soup, I wanted it to not be like too oppressive. So that's why I didn't give it any of the defensive keywords like spell shield, toughness, or anything like that. I also needed a way to make her having a darken equipment for like Aatrox's assimilate. I needed some way for that to make sense. Now, the Darken Fragment also is just a 1 mana 0/0 quick attack, but this is when I am removed from an ally, obliterate me instead. But so this essentially, the way that this Darken Dagger Fragment works is that like, if your Naafiri gets bounced to your hand, this fragment would disappear. And I did this mostly because like, I don't want to start having the opponents to just like have like 100 of these in their hand, right, from all the Naafiris. But I still want Naafiri to be able to have an equipment when it's attacking in. Hence why we have the Darken Fragments. So anyway, Naafiri's Eviscerate. This was a card that I needed some way to like make a Naafiri champ spell matter. And even then, I don't think that this is like an amazing card, but it does fit the lore very nicely. It's like, considering that Naafiri's region is very limited to just being Naafiri, you need something that is like useful to have when you have a handful of Naafiris. So I figured something that was a striking spell that didn't cost too much. It's a fast speed spell that is Naafiri's champ spell. All battling Naafiri strike a battling enemy unit. I cost 1 more for each Naafiri you have, right? Here's a trade-off with this, right? You have to keep in mind that there will be 10 copies of Naafiri in your deck. So now if you play 1, and it's summoning ones from deck, like you can't summon a Naafiri from your hand. So these are gonna clog up your hand if you're just constantly summoning ones from the deck. Early on, you need a way to be able to play them kind of cheap. Once it gets later into the game and you have like 6 of them, it becomes too good to have a 2 mana deal 24 damage. So I wanna like stress while we're looking at this card that there's a reason I didn't make this video. Some of these cards I like thought was a cool concept I wanted to introduce into the game, but I think the actual like way I went about it probably is somewhere between doesn't make sense or just wouldn't be very strong if it did exist. This next one is the Dune Hound. This is a 2 mana Shurima card that is a 2/1, and its effect is if I am equipped with a Darken whose unit cost is 3 or less, assimilate, which basically means Naafiri, because every other Darken in the game, their unit cost is 5 or more, right? The cheapest one is Joral in Varus, I think. If cheaper Darkens had been introduced, this could be a good way to like turbo them out with a card like this. It was just meant to be a cool way to utilize Assimilate that wasn't just Aatrox's endgame card. So the next card, do you guys remember in Hearthstone, they had the subtype Murloc? And Murlocs were like a really annoying archetype, especially for like new players. So in order to combat that, they introduced a card in the base set called Hungry Crab. Destroy a Murloc and give itself stats. Murlocs like were strong, but not strong enough that Hungry Crab was ever like good. And because Hungry Crab was way too specific, it was way too focused on like being a counter to this one archetype. So if that archetype didn't see play, there was no reason to run Hungry Crab, right? The next card I'm gonna show you is the exact same concept, just in LOR. But I wanna get into like I'm gonna flip to the card, but before I go over what it does, you guys can read it and give me your thoughts, but I want to go over why I created it. The idea here was that I watched the Naafiri trailer, and in the Naafiri trailer, there's a moment where like Naafiri is going through an existential crisis. You see this creature, this thing, eat her, like, you know, in her mind. And so it just really got me thinking, like, Darkens are supposed to be these super strong, huge willpower type creatures, but they fear. Like, they have fears, they have emotions. And so I saw this thing in the trailer, and I was like, that thing needs to be a card. That needs to exist. That looks sick. First off, the artwork looks amazing on it, but like, it's also a cool concept of like, Darkens do have fears. There is something they're afraid of. But so that's why I made what Darkens fear, a 6 mana 4/4 with double attack, and I gain +1/+1 for each Darken in play. Obliterate all Darken units and equipment with less power than me. So you can already see the parallels I'm making to Hungry Crab here, right? It's a card that's really good against Darkens. Specifically, it is really good against Naafiri, because baseline, it already has more stats than Naafiri. And the idea is that the I gain +1 for each Darken in play, that's like on play. When it's on the board and the skill for the Obliterate is happening, it will have that stat. So if you have a board full of Darkens and your opponent has a board full of Darkens, this thing has +11. If your opponent only has Aatrox, it will do nothing, because it will be 5 and your opponent's Aatrox is 6. I already know the issues with this card. I already understand what the problem is with this card as far as playability and like how viable it is. But I was like, this needs to exist. And this was just like, as like an anti-Darken tech card was the only way that we could make that work reasonably, I think. So that's my excuse. So I had to be very careful with this card. Because Shurima already has a card that lets cats start a free attack. So I was like, we should just have one for dogs. I think Shurima having like very specific rallies could be really cool for the region going forward. Man, Hound's Pursuit, I initially had it as just like summon a dog ally from your deck starting a free attack. But that makes Nasus very strong because he is a dog. And I was like, I can't allow this. This can still be strong. Like, if you have a leveled Naafiri in your deck, leveled Naafiri will just, like, for 4 mana, summon a full squad of Naafiris attacking. As you can tell, the whole point of Naafiri as a deck is to just be the, like, embodiment of the printer deck that a lot of people like to do without needing to do the printing step. So you just always have Naafiris in the deck that you're just constantly pumping out. I don't remember making this card, if I'm going to be honest with you. So I don't know that this was like anything I was really married to. I guess the thing that could be cool with Call of the Pack is if you are on some kind of like proliferating Wraith. Like imagine Call of the Pack with this card, right? Out of all the cards so far, seems the most believable to be an LOR. I don't make custom cards with the intent of them being like what the LOR developers would make. I worry about making it faithful to LOR mechanics after the fact. You know, this is actually probably a pretty good time for me to show some LOR memes that I've just like been holding on to. Like I have this that I made for a video way back. You can tell how long ago I made it because the region identities were still on the bottom of the card. This was a shit post that I made. I think the LOR, the official LOR account said something to the effect of like, change the wording on one card in the game to make it broken. So I just changed Maokai to each round, the first time you play another ally, toss 2 and summon a catastrophe instead of a sapling. Figure, you know, one word, we can make that work. I had made this shit post of Jin when he first came out. Just, you know, trying to keep up with the 4. You know, deal 4 + 4 divided by 4 to all enemies. And then when you played 4 times 4 minus 4 divided by 4. There is a way that I could have done like another 4 somewhere that someone pointed out after the fact. Slap Rahend. Kill an enemy if you have a Callista rally. I genuinely don't remember why I have this. Okay, wait, hang on. Guys, you want to see something that I got commissioned? I asked one of my friends to make this for me. I totally forgot that I had that, and I haven't had any reason to use that artwork for anything, but I asked one of my friends, like, hey, could you draw me something like this? I should find my pre-Diana custom Diana LOR card. I mean, look, if you guys want me to go over some of the custom cards I have, I literally still have the files right here. Some of the cards I did were, like, some old-school Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? So we have, like, I don't know how many of you guys remember Gate Guardian, but there were 3 parts to Gate Guardian. Gate Guardian, there wasn't a whole lot to. They each just had, like, some kind of effect, right? Like, Sangha here was just a kind of nice statted unit that when an enemy blocks me, double my power this round. The thing to know about the Gate Guardian cards in the actual Yu-Gi-Oh game is that they didn't have abilities. Like, none of them did anything, except in the show. In the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, they had effects. So this was, like, trying to, like, kind of work more off of what they did in the anime rather than in the actual game. Because in the actual game, they didn't do shit. Kazujin was he had toughness instead of fearsome. His stats were kind of flipped. And a random enemy and I strike each other at the, you know, round end. I tried to, like, they need to all be in one region, identical to each other, but then, like, I just tried to make it so they could be playable in something else. Suijin had a tune, but if it blocks, it stuns the attacker. And they all had this effect of, like, if I see the other 2 components, combine us into Gate Guardian, so they would just, like, all leave your board and turn into this Gate Guardian thing. I put him as a 10 mana card, but like understanding is that you would never actually like play him at 10 mana. The idea is that he would just be like a really big threat that you would get from the other 2 cards, or the other 3 cards, I should say. Fairly nice stats, has toughness and fearsome. And then he has, like, the combined effects of the other 3 cards. So when I block, stun the strongest attacker with less power than me. So if the strongest thing has, like, less than 9, it'll get stunned. He could deal double power. He'd get double power anytime he attacks. And he would strike a random enemy at the end of each round. So, like, slightly stronger versions of what each of the things did on their own. But just because the cost of having him is you have to spend, what is that, 4, 8, 9, 10, 13 mana. You have to spend 13 mana and get 3 cards to stick on the board for a full turn. So that was like the trade-off with actually getting Gate Guardian down. The, like, win more condition of this deck is if they did somehow kill Gate Guardian, or you were in Shadow Isles and just wanted to kill your own. 7 mana, if a Gate Guardian died this game, summon a Dark Guardian. A 10 mana 12/12 fearsome spell shield. You cannot play or summon other units. I take no damage from combat. So this was like, you gotta keep in mind, I made this what? This was August of 2022. This was like what I envisioned Can't Be Stopped would be. Giving your opponent options for counterplay, but just making it really hard. So you'd have to, like, Vile Feast Vengeance was probably the best way to get rid of something like this. But this is after you just got rid of a Gate Guardian. I don't know, that was just like my Gate Guardian. I had like a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, so I don't know if I'm gonna make this a video, but I guess I'll just, like, say here just to have an outro for this. Like, I had fun making this. I don't know that I'll make a whole lot of more other custom LOR cards going forward. We'll see. It'll entirely depend. But if you did enjoy this, you know, make sure to hit that like button and make sure to hit the subscribe button. I have a bunch of other videos in this series of making custom cards, so you can always go back and rewatch those. I will say that I am proud of every card that I have made. I like everything that I have made, and I feel good about everything that I've made. I had fun making these. I'd love to keep making custom cards for stuff. It's just a matter of finding something that sparks my interest.